Hello everybody and welcome back to our continuous self-assessment podcast. My name is Yvonne Thorogood. I'm the Learning and Engagement Officer here at Homestart UK, and today we are looking at the Brand Communications and Digital Standard as well as the Partnerships and Influencing Standard. Joined with me today we've got Beth Wilson, who's our Digital Communications Manager, Catherine Barber, who is the Chief Exec for Homestart Oxford, and as always, Steve Griffiths, who is our Quality Improvement Specialist.
Today we're going to go through the Brand Communication Data and Digital Standard. This one has 4 indicators, 2 of which are requirements, BAC 002 and 003, and there are 2 good practice indicators, HSQA 13 and HSQA 14. Looking through this standard, I'm joined today by Beth, and I'll ask her to introduce herself to you now.
Hi everyone, I'm Beth Wilson, Digital Comms Manager at Homestart UK. So I look after our social media, our website, things like brand stencil, and giving you lot out there guidance and training on all things digital.
Thanks, Beth, and thank you for joining us today. So, as in the other podcasts, we're going to go through each indicator one by one. So we're going to start off looking at the first indicator, which is BAC 002. And this is the indicator that says all Homestarts must follow the Homestart brand guidelines. Could you say, Beth, why following the Homestart brand guidelines is so important?
As a federated charity, it's really important that we look the same to the public, that we have a united message and branding across the whole of the network. If you're not sure where to find our brand guidelines, you can search for those on At Home. And Brand Stencil has everything you need, imagery, icons, etc. To be brand compliant. Just make sure that you are downloading images every time to check that you are GDPR compliant. We remove those when consent isn't valid anymore. So just make sure that you are using the ones that are currently on Brand Stencil.
Thank you, Beth. Could you just give a couple of tips to people about if they do have a website or social media accounts, what the key things they should make sure they do with those?
The first thing I always say to Homestars is quality over quantity. So have a think about what social media accounts you already have. So say, for example, have you got 4 and actually it's very hard to post on all those 4, but you get the most engagement from, for example, Facebook. I would encourage you to kind of put your time and your effort and your energy into that one account where you're getting the most engagement, and you can kind of really channel your energy and what resource you have into that one account. Now, that's not to say you don't have to have more than one. You can, but it's thinking about the algorithm loves you being consistent. And so that's what I would say. That's what I'm always saying in my social media forums, is to be as consistent as you can. If you start posting on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, try to keep that up as much as you can. A scheduling tool will really help you with that. So if you have half an hour spare or even 10 minutes, you could use something like Meta Business Suite. So if you are using Facebook and Instagram, that is free and available to you. Or you can have a free charity account with Metricool, and then you're able to schedule across all your platforms if you have more than Facebook and Instagram. So scheduling tools are a really great way to kind of use your time effectively. Like I say, if you have 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you've got, you could schedule well in advance. Another tip I would say is to check out our Awareness Days calendar. So that gives you all the awareness days that are appropriate for your audience, appropriate for kind of parents and children. And there are awareness days templates on Brand Stencil and in Canva now as well. So you can edit those and add in your own logo. And so you can be marking those awareness days. And they're a really easy way to engage with your audience who are talking about the same thing at the same time, whether it's World Children's Day or a religious festival, whatever it might be. That's a really good way to kind of be part of the conversation.
Thank you, Beth. That's great. And just to remind people that there's not currently a requirement for you to have a website or social media accounts. So if you're one of those home starts that don't have that at the moment, when you're thinking about this indicator, you can think about how you communicate using hard copy materials like leaflets and posters, and just make sure that they are brand compliant. Okay, so the next indicator, BAC003, Beth has already covered this in what she said. And just to make sure you understand that the brand license is part of the legal agreement which they sign with HSUK when they become part of the Federation. So moving on to the next indicator, which is HSQA 13. So this is a good practice indicator, and this is around a GDPR compliance, which we have already covered and evaluated in the quality and impact round. So you can just repeat in your narrative for this indicator what you said about your GDPR checklist when you did your QAI self-assessment. We're not asking you to upload the checklist again. So the final indicator in this standard is HSQA 14, which is about how you may move to using more digital and technology-based solutions in how you communicate with your stakeholders and also how you deliver services. So I'm going to ask Beth to give some ideas around that.
So my top tip would be to meet with your team in January and to think about your digital marketing, your digital comms. What is it that you put out last year? What went well? What was well received? Did you get any good comments? Things like that. For social media, you can look in your Meta Business Suite and look on Facebook and Instagram for what was your best performing posts. They do a really easy, nice kind of summary at the bottom of your top 3 posts, so that might just give you an idea. And think about things like emails. They can often be overlooked as digital comms. So yeah, I would encourage you to meet in January, to have a planning meeting with your team to just talk about, okay, what went well? What could we improve on? Have we got new ideas that we can bring to the table? And just think about your capacity, what you have time to commit to. Because as I said before, the algorithm and even your email marketing, people love consistency. So if you do want to start something like an email newsletter, for example, it's thinking about the frequency of that. How often can we send something out? What do we want to say? Do we want to do that monthly, quarterly? Who are we sending it to? Can we add something on our website to get people's email addresses to add them to a newsletter? So yeah, it's a good time in January to really think about your digital comms and think about strategy as well. So you probably listen to this and thinking, I don't have time to write a whole strategy, and that's absolutely okay. But maybe just get a big piece of paper and write your social media channels down and really have a think about what are we saying on each channel? Who are our audience? What are we trying to say to those people? How are we communicating with them? And then that's where you can tie in what went well. Oh, we did this post on, well-being, for example, and that worked really well. Could we do a little series in January, to help people with their well-being? Things like that. Can you take evidence of what's gone well and kind of bring it into your plan for the year ahead?
Thanks, Beth. So we're not asking you to upload any evidence for this standard. And the other things on HSQA 14, that if you don't currently have a website or you don't use any social media accounts, one of the things you may want to consider is whether you want to move into trying to develop one or both of those. And Beth, could I ask you, what type of support would we be able to provide to a home start in that situation?
So please get in touch with me in the first instance. We work with a freelancer who helps us with our local Home Start websites. They can build and manage that for you, update it for you when you need, but you still have the access, you know, to upload news and different things or new imagery if you want to, but it just means that there is someone looking after it for you, and we do recommend that, especially, you know, if you have a like low capacity in your team. So we can set that up for you. I can help you set up social media. I have a social media forum as well, which is quarterly, and we just meet and kind of talk through anything that you want help with, kind of sharing successes, things like that. So that's a really helpful place to kind of pick up tips and tricks. So yeah, we're on hand to give you that support, but do get in touch with me in the first instance and I can help you set those up. I have documents that I can send out, like social media guides and things to help you, give you access to brand stencil to find all the imagery and everything that you need as well.
Thanks so much. So that brings us to the end of this part of the podcast. And just to remind you that we're not asking you to upload any evidence for this standard. So it is quite important that you make your narrative for the self-assessment very clear on what you're currently doing to meet the indicators and what you plan to do if you're not currently fully met on them. Thank you for your time, and thanks, Beth, for joining us.
Thank you.
So we're now going to move on and look at the partnership and influencing standard. In this standard, there are 4 indicators altogether. 2 of these are requirements, which is BRD 001 and 002, and HSQA 15 and HSQA 16. We don't need you to upload any evidence for this standard, so we're going to be very reliant on your narrative when we evaluate. So please make sure your narrative is detailed. So we're now moving on to look at the partnership and influencing standard. And the first indicator that we're going to look at is a must requirement from the handbook, which is BRD 001. And this is essentially about how you maintain good relationships with your neighbouring home starts and avoid conflicts. I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Catherine Barber, the CEO from Home Start Oxford. And I'm just going to ask Catherine to give us some examples of how they've approached this locally.
Brilliant. Well, I guess we're helped by having a long-established consortium in Oxfordshire. So we're 3 local home starts working together. And one of the important first things that we did was to look at the geography of the county, and we kind of redrew our boundaries when many years ago we established that there were gaps in our coverage and some areas were becoming impractical due to transport links. So we made sure that all of our local home starts have really clear boundaries covering the whole patch, and yeah, making sure that we've got clarity, so we're not treading on one another's toes.
Thank you. And I think what's important about that, it demonstrates for this indicator, it's both about avoiding conflict and also how you maintain good relationships at both the trustee and staff level with your neighbouring home starts. Could you just say a little bit about how the consortium helps you do the maintaining good relationships?
Yeah, so we've got a revolving lead agency approach. So no one home start is the lead agency. That varies across our 3 for different funding relationships that we have. But we've got a really established pattern now of meetings together. So every 2 months, we've got an operations meeting of senior staff across the consortium. In fact, recently we had an away day for all of our staff, a social event for staff across the 3 home starts. And we have meetings with trustees every 3 months. So that's more of a governance level meeting with senior staff and trustees from across the piece. We're asking about ways in which we've worked effectively together. And one of the things that we've done is shared a bit of expertise. So there might be one home start that leads on a particular area. And for example, our trustee, who's the governance expert, has delivered GDPR training for one of our sister home starts, and we share training. So if we're delivering training for our volunteers or our staff and it's online, we share that opportunity out across our 3 home starts so that everyone can take part. So building in those ways.
Thank you, Catherine. They're perfect examples. Thank you so much. So I'm now going to move on to the good practice indicators in this standard, which are HSQA 15 and HSQA 16, which are essentially about how you influence at a local level and work collaboratively with other partner agencies, and how those relationships help you influence either service development or policy development towards working with families with young children. Catherine, would you be able to give us some examples of how you do that locally?
Yeah, so we have some particularly strong relationships with one particular charity in our area called People, who have developed the Keep Learning Together programme, which is an evidence-based approach to supporting the home learning environment. And they're a national trainer, but they're also based in our area. And we've been working together for many years, and then in 2020 developed a partnership project together, so that we deliver home visiting support allied to their evidence-based parenting programmes. And we have another third charity that's a local partner, and it's been really beneficial because People are a national charity with a local presence, and we've sort of lent on that infrastructure to help manage some of the operational side of that project. And then our other third partner is a really rooted local organisation, and we sit in between those two. So I think we've really been able to play to our strengths, show how we've got that relationship with families and that community and practice experience around particular vulnerabilities, and they've got a really strong sort of evidence research base that complements us really well.
Great. And I think there's also another example you've had of actually doing some development work with other agencies about getting families with young children on the agenda locally. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I guess it came about quite organically. It was just sort of spotting a need and a gap in our community in the first instance. So when our county closed its children's centres, early years really went off the agenda, and it felt like our sector was quite neglected. So it started as an approach around peer support in COVID, where we created, a colleague and I from another charity created an early years network. So that was to share experience and really just sort of help each other out practically with ideas to continue and evolve. And that's then grown into, it's still quite modest in scale, but we meet 4 times a year and we share practice. But that now has become a place where we'll get the Family Hub policy lead to come and talk to us about what's going on. So Home Start's developed a kind of leading position to be a representative and a voice for the local early years voluntary sector, and we were also in these intervening years really advocating for it to get back on the agenda and for more support. And I could see that the county needed a kind of a scale of operations that fit with its own scale, and because our map is more smaller local charities, the early years network has really filled a gap in that they can see that by talking to us they're capturing the whole of the sector, so that's held us in really good stead. It's meant we've become the kind of go-to charity, I think, for early years locally. And then perhaps connected to that, but when early years got more on the agenda about 18 months ago, and an early years board was created for the county, I was invited to join that partnership board and advocated for another charity, our Parent Infant Project, to also be on there. So again, sort of forming alliances and showing we didn't work in a silo, but we were, really broad thinking in our approach to the solutions around early years. And that's meant that we have really heavily influenced the shape of the early years strategy for the county. When we produce text that we again co-produced with other organisations in our sector, it was basically adopted sort of word for word, which is really gratifying.
Great, thank you. They're such good examples of influencing, so thank you for sharing those. Finally, could I just ask you to think about your experience in this area and say what are some of the tips around the sort of perhaps the skills and the practical things that are needed to enable you to achieve this?
I suppose over time, the experience has just been recurringly positive. So I found that I've got peer support from these relationships with peer organisations locally. But I think values, like a fit of values, has been really important. So the collaboration with people that I mentioned, their stated values match so brilliantly with Home Start's, so that we knew we kind of had a shared foundation, if you like. And then I suppose like professional generosity is a phrase that I've heard, that I feel like my style isn't particularly territorial, so I hope I practice this, but just to not be too precious and see that good can come out of sharing. And yeah, I guess that sort of summarises it.
And also, I guess you need the resources and time to do this work locally, because has that been, presumably your trustees have enabled you to have this time to do that?
Yeah, one of the things that's really key is having the time and the support from the board to enable that work to happen, and a funding environment that allows for a bit of flexibility. So I suppose because my role was new, there was a degree of freedom, going back 10 years now, but you know, it meant that we've had the space to within our structure to enable that work to happen, and the culture on the board to support that has been absolutely critical.
Thank you so much. Really, thank you for sharing those examples with us, and obviously best wishes for all of that work continuing positively as it is at the moment. Is there anything else you would like to say on anything we've discussed, or is that okay?
I think that's fine. I've just got one more thought that came to mind that you can choose to keep or not, and that's that I think Home Start's in an incredible position of strength because we are so close to families' lives, and we see what happens in families' homes that would normally be hidden from the eyes of policymakers. And I suppose whether it's through case studies or the storytelling approach that Home Start uses, we bring a very unique perspective, and I think you know, it's great when we can capitalise on that, because it's a perspective that policymakers and decision makers really need to hear, and I think has been valued by them when we've had the opportunity to bring that to the fore.
Thanks for adding that, Catherine, because that's actually something that every local Home Start has in common with yourself, that they have that information and those stories. So thank you. I'm now going to look at indicator BRD002, which is about your whistleblowing policy. For this indicator, in your narrative, we would like you to confirm that you have a whistleblowing policy in place, and also to tell us how you communicate this to your volunteers and staff. So we will evaluate that indicator purely on the narrative that you give us. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We hope it's been helpful for you. This brings us to the end of our very first cycle of the continuous self-assessment process, and myself and the quality team would like to thank you for participating in this. We hope you found it really helpful. We have gained a lot of information ourselves, so thank you for your participation. This particular standard, the closing date is the 30th of April 2026. So we will restart the cycle in May 2026. And we're going to restart looking at the Protecting Families standard. The difference for the second cycle is that all Home Starts will have a full set of indicators already uploaded via the web form. So there will be no need for you to recreate any indicator from scratch unless you missed it the first time round. But for the majority of you, you can simply go in and edit your existing self-assessment and narrative via the web form. And there is a video on how to do this on our quality pages. Right, we really look forwards to our next cycle, and we will be doing another podcast for protecting families, and we'll give further information, including the timetable for the different rounds very soon. Thank you. Goodbye.